Oli Olis, this is The Double Face, a true crime podcast. Hi, I'm Jose. I'm also known as Jose No Juan, but this is...
Melissa. Hi, guys.
Hey, this is part 2 to Ted Bundy. I know it was a lot of information last week. He goes up and down, but I kind of wanted you guys to have like a roller coaster ride. Before we get into that, let me tell you about my weekend real quick. I went because it's Pride Month, and so this Pride Month I was invited to a Roaring 20s, and it was a really nice event. Really, almost like a gala. People were dressed to the nines. It was really pretty. We both couldn't go. I went. The tickets were expensive. I was invited, so I didn't have to pay, luckily. But either way, I had a really good time. What did you do?
Work.
Oh.
Work.
Well,
Yeah, we're gearing up for a big season, so that's all. I'll leave it there. We're gearing up for back to school, so it's one of those. My job entails transitioning in and out of season, so.
Oh, okay. That makes sense.
Yeah.
So I'm going to go ahead and let you start off. We were going to kind of tie you up a little bit from the last time. We already know that Ted is on a murder rampage, and he has already gotten caught.
He's about to.
Well, yeah, I'm so sorry. He's about to get caught, and I'll go ahead and let you take off.
Okay, so we left off where he was caught with all the items that were in his bag inside his vehicle. So on June 7th, Bundy escapes from Pickens County Courthouse in Aspen for the preliminary hearing for Carol Duranche's escape. He's serving as his own attorney, so he's able to kind of wander around, and he goes to the courthouse law library, and he sees a window there, and I think that's where he sees his ooh, I think I can do this.
So may I interject? Yeah. So the reason he did that is because prior to that, he has mentioned that he's had too many opportunities where he said, well, I was kind of left alone. I had a chance to get away. So he was like, you know what? I'm just going to take the next chance or the next couple of chances and find my way out of there.
So he ends up opening the window, jumping out, injuring his ankle as he landed. 6 days later, Bundy was found on June 13th.
And the reason we don't really go into too much detail is because he's not harming anyone at this time. He is lost and alone in Aspen, Colorado.
Yeah, and it's cold.
It's
he's trying
raining,
to survive.
It's cold. So all he does is he's trying to survive, can't hack it, and is found because that dumbass finally said, oh my God, it's too cold. I'm just going to make my way back into Aspen, knowing the police are all over looking for him. And he goes back down because he can't hack it anymore. So he goes down for food and just to kind of get arrested. He knew, and they immediately, lands there and immediately gets caught. So can I take?
Yeah, take over. Sorry.
So I'm sorry. I looked at her.
I know. I was like, I was like, he's gonna read my mind. Sorry.
On December 30th, 1977, shortly after, as she mentioned, at this point they are trying their best to say, look, let's keep him locked up. Let's make sure this time he is not gonna get away from us. We're gonna make sure that we're just watching him everywhere, every which way he can. He's in a cell by himself. There's a bunk bed, of course, one above him, and there is nothing but books. Mind you, because he gets to represent himself, he gets to have all the paperwork, the pictures, anything that they have, he gets to see. So he requests a typewriter. He gets to see everything, books after book. His cell has tons of books in there. At the same time, he is plotting at this point. Look, I can get away once. I'm going to do it again. And he does. One night, one of the officers goes over there and hands over the food. Like normal. Then walks away, doesn't think twice about it. Well, the next morning he comes back to check up on Ted because, he's probably going to go to court. He's going to deal with this. He notices that Ted is still laying in bed. By that time, he's usually up and running and he is up and at it. But he notices there's the food still in the same spot. So he's like, wait, this doesn't make any sense. He didn't eat. So he opens the cell, pulls it open, gets in there, pulls back the blanket, and notices it's not him. It's the shape of him in books. But on top, there's a hole in the ceiling. And that ceiling he's made his way through there and has managed to escape because he's very smart. Don't get it wrong. He is extremely smart. He had already lost weight.
He lost 30 pounds.
Yes, a lot. That's a lot.
That's a lot of...
This hole that he made, it's
a crawl space.
It's a small crawl space where, let's just say I or even Melissa would want, we're not going to do it. We can't fit. Not even one hand at a time. We're just not going to fit. He was so tiny at that time. But he makes his way out there. And the reason he also made his way through the crawl of the ceiling, he lands inside one of it's a jailer's closet. But so when he jumps in there, he waits because he sees that there is an officer there. Waits until the coast is clear, gets right through the ceiling, gets in there, gets food. Is ready. He changes his clothes and walks right out of the prison.
Front door.
Can you imagine? They called him a chameleon, and looking at the pictures now that we know everything, we're like, there's no way.
That was interesting. Sorry, I'm excited because I saw like the mug shots. It's like 9 different mug shots. It's crazy.
And he changes it to like frizzy hair, clean hair. But every photo of him, mostly, they're all clean shaven. There are some where he has his beards like
it's
different
barely
ways.
growing out. Yeah.
Sorry, I'm drinking water if you hear that. So he's managed to escape again. But on January 14th, 1978, in Tallahassee, Florida. And this is one thing that her and I were kind of looking at. I noticed that how did he make his way? I don't know if this is true. I tried my best to look it up, but it said he made his way to Florida because he went on a bus ride. And then
like a train, a bus ride,
a bus,
and then the plane ride.
A plane, stole a car, and then another bus ride, and made his way to Tallahassee, Florida.
It is crazy.
It sounds like a make-believe. I can see why when you're watching this from Ted, like anything about Ted Bundy, it seems fabricated. But the reality is, this is what it seems like. He did all that to get there. Took a flight. Now, this is the times are different because he was able to get on a flight to get to another city, to get to that city, then make his. It was just a lot, but he was able to do it. If I saw him, I think I wouldn't question either. Clean shaven white man. Go ahead, next.
Because all he was charged for at this point was just the escape or the kidnapping of Carol DeRange. So that's all that's on his background.
Yeah.
So this is just the beginning of what's to happen.
Exactly. So on January 14th, 1978 in Tallahassee, Florida, 2 co-ed students were brutally murdered. Margaret Bowen was one of the victims, and the other one was literally down the door, the next door, which was Lisa Levy, Kathy Kleiner, Karen Chandler. So both Kathy and Karen were both survivors. So Sheriff Kenneth Kitsaris is watching this. It shows up and he says, oh my goodness, this is a lot of information. Well, during that time, while he's watching some of these girls on the stretchers ready to be taken to, the hospitals.
Because they still couldn't tell who was alive and who wasn't.
No.
They were all brutally beaten.
Beaten really bad. Mind you, crowbar is his biggest thing. Well, he gets, how they have their little radios right there? He gets like this radio call and it says, hey, there's another girl only 6 blocks away. Somebody is a victim. We wonder if it's tied together. And he says in his head, something instinctually tells him, I wonder if this is connected. Let's just send an officer over there. So he does. He sends an officer there, and the officer walks in and sees the same thing, a bloody mess. And this time, it's Cheryl Thomas, and she's laying in a pool of her own blood. And of course, it's the exact same way the other girls are found. And so, of course, the other officer is like, oh my God, you've got to get down here. This has to be connected. He must be still close by because she's kind of, I mean, she's not cold. None of these girls are cold to the touch.
With Carol Thomas, she was found with a dislocated shoulder, a fractured jaw. Her skull was in 5 different places. She barely escapes with her life. She only survives because the neighbor's the one who calls like, hey, sounds like somebody's arguing on the other side of that wall. Because she was in a duplex, I think.
Yes,
right?
yes.
So she escapes with her life. Thank God for the neighbor for calling. Because if not, who knows, she would have probably been another victim.
Yeah, I agree too. So on February 9th, 1976, he still escapes, he gets away, and this is where it starts getting a little more intense. Trigger warning, because she is a child. So on February 9th, 1978, 12-year-old Kimberly Diane Leach, who lived in Lake City, Florida, is attending Lake City Junior High School, went missing. By this point, Ted has been missing for about 45 days, right?
Almost, yes.
Yeah. And on February 15th, 1978, Ted Bundy was caught, thankfully. And I think this is where most people don't understand. I heard, we don't really know, but they said that he wasn't a great driver.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, that he wasn't a great driver and he sped a lot. And had he not sped or driven crazy, then most of the time you think that he would have gotten away with it. And I wonder if that's what they didn't explain. The officer didn't say that he was driving erratic. But somebody else did mention that he wasn't the best of drivers, and that's probably how he got caught in this instance. Also didn't give his name. He gives a fake name. He gives the name of Ken Meisner. And they're like, who's Ken Meisner? So they're looking it up, and they're like, we really can't find anything. So they just go with it. They're trying to get more information, and the one thing that Ted does is stays quiet. Doesn't give out information. He is a little smarter than the average bear. He knows I'm not going to say anything. But the detectives know that there's something to it because they can't get anything other than Ken Meisner. That's it. They even take him to court, and they're not getting much out of him other than Ken Meisner. Well, it happens to be that they go on the news and they're like, hey, there's a guy here in Florida who is Ken Meisner, but we don't know who he is, can't find any information other than he had credit cards that were from the co-eds and that he had Ken Meisner as a name. Ken Meisner calls
in and says, it's not me. I'm over here. I'm not the one who you have in prison. Is not who he's using my name. So that's how they're like, okay, well, we got somebody on our hands and we don't know who it is.
And only because he kept those credit cards. Luckily, the police officers were like, wait.
21 credit cards.
21 were credit cards that were like, wait, why is he tying in to these girls that just were brutally murdered? Why do you have their credit cards? After being pressed and questioned for so long, on February 21st, 1978, which is, just 6 days? At 3:20, Ted finally agrees to be interviewed and confesses, but on one condition, that he gets to call Elizabeth. And if you remember, he's still with Elizabeth, and he wants to just have a conversation with her. Mind you, by this point, Elizabeth has already gotten all the information that it could be him, that there's ties to him. And so, of course, they're recording it. Ted calls her, and the first thing out of her mouth is, do you have anything to do with the co-ed girls in Tallahassee? It's not me. She says, if it is you, you're disgusting. she is not having it anymore. She's not going with his, like, the only reason she even accepted the call is because when he called, her daughter picked up and accepted the collect call. But she said, I wasn't ready for that. I didn't want to accept it. I didn't want to talk to him. But he did have, she still, I think, was working with the police to get conversations to see what they would get out of him. But one thing Ted does not do is give out a lot of information.
And that's it. She was the one that was finding clues left and right, trying to, like, what is all of this? So
if you remember, she's the one that found stuff in her house and then tied it. Finally was like, ding, ding, ding. Something's making sense here. So on April 1978, while he was called, Sheriff Ken Cassiers one day walks into his cell and escorts Bundy out. This is something that's really interesting. He did something that I was pretty surprised, because they've kept him for quite some time at this point. They are trying to go to trial, but they're like, you know what? Let's get him into a cell that they're actually gonna, like, it's on full lockdown. He cannot get out. There's no way. So that's the same time that the sheriff says, you know what? Let's not tell him. Let's just go visit him. And they go in there, they pull him out, they drive him to a location where there's a building, and there are doctors ready for him. They're interviewing him, and they're recording everything. And at first, once he sees that there's doctors there, you could tell that Ted is furious. He doesn't want to work with it. He's grinding his teeth. He's like, no, you're not going to do this. I don't care. I have my rights. Until they show him. This is where I love that he gets cowardly. They were like, that's fine. You don't have to work with us. But we have proof that, look, here is the warrant that it says we are going to take the imprints of your teeth. Because one thing that we didn't know was that his signature throughout the other ones, because of the decay, they didn't catch it. But because of these co-ed girls, they have an imprint of his teeth on there. I don't know why, but I guess through the aggression, he bit on.
He bit one of the girls' buttocks.
Yes. Yeah. So he bites down, and of course they have the imprint of the teeth.
It's almost perfect. It's just like, oh.
And if you looked at Ted, he had a little bit of a crooked teeth at the top. So that's really what they want. Mind you, they don't have what they have today, the technology. So they've got to work with what little they have. So they said, don't worry. You don't have to give us an imprint if you don't want to, but we're going to force it out of you. So we're going to use these tools. And they show him the tools. And quickly, he switches like that. And he's like, well, calms down, lowers his voice. And he's like, hey, you can have whatever you want. I'm not an aggressive human being. I'm just not like that.
Mind you had just been aggressive with them.
Just got crazy seconds ago. And he's like, do whatever you gotta do. Take it with my permission. Even though he knew that they were gonna use jaw to, like, open his jaw just to get that imprint. So, because God forbid he feels pain. So they get it, and they take him right back, and it is what it is. On June 1st of 1979, the trial begins. And they're like, good. Because remember, the officers are trying their best to get everything in order. So when the trial comes, they at least have something. And people are stuck to this trial. I mean, it is a shit show, at the least, to say the least. It's a circus. They offer Ted a plea bargain. In the very beginning, they offer the plea bargain, and guess what Ted says? No, I'm good.
I'm not guilty.
I said, thank you so much.
Thank you.
But I'm smarter than you, right? So I'm just going to go ahead and do this myself.
I was... My jaw dropped when I saw some of the footage that they were showing in what you're about to talk about.
And if you've never seen it, I really recommend you seen this. Any of these movies where they show clips of his behavior, because it shows how erratic he is.
And arrogant, too.
Unhinged. The arrogance is all over this. Here is his arrogance. On July 1st of 1979, yours truly's birthday too, Ted acts as his own lawyer, but he also has Margaret Good there, kind of, because he can't really represent himself because he's not a real lawyer. So he actually needs lawyers there to still.
That's the only way he can do it, if he has some representation.
But this is, to me, so interesting that mind you, he loses a couple of lawyers along the way because as the lawyer they're helping along the way. He's like, I don't really like you. I don't like you.
You're not doing your job right.
You're not doing your job right. I'm smarter than you. I should represent myself. Can't believe the lawyer said yes. The judge says, that's fine. Of course you can.
That judge had some patience. I was just like, I would have threw him out already.
I would have said, you're not representing yourself.
This is my courtroom now.
You're dumb. You're dumb. And done. But so he, along the way, is distracting as much as he can. He complains about everything. Mind you, the trial is going on.
And he's walking around freely. Oh, let me go see that paperwork you're looking at. What are you talking about? Yes. I was like...
he has the right as a lawyer. Yes. Sorry, you can't see my air quotes on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, but I'm doing air quotes. But he's walking around.
Like as if nothing.
As if he is actually representing someone else, not himself. Mind you, to the judge, he has already complained about he needs more time in the library. His food wasn't up to par. He needed more time to work out. There's bad lighting in the cell. Do you know that when he complains about the bad lighting, the judge gets out of the courthouse, goes to his cell and says, look, let me see what he's talking about.
I can't believe he had
The judge says, it makes me so mad. The judge says, oh, wow, I couldn't, not under these conditions. I couldn't work like this. So I can't have Ted working like this. Move his cell. Move him. He needs better lighting. Why are you entertaining this man? I didn't understand anything about this judge because it really fired me up. But anything he could do, he's going to distract. So, Judge Coward is his name. Coward. Not coward with the D, but with the T and like Tom. He, of course, allows him to represent himself, and it goes on. At this point, Bundy is entertaining the masses, mommy. He is, whenever I feel he doesn't have a base of, like, anything to rebuttal with, he's going to distract you. He's going to yell, he's going to scream. Anyway.
He even talks back to the judge a few times.
Yeah.
I was like, oh my God, this wouldn't be happening now. I feel
like it could happen now.
To a certain extent. This was beyond, it's like he was putting on a show, for sure.
Mind you, this show is going on and on and on. And at the very end, Judge Coward, on July 24th, 1975, he says, okay, the jury has decided, let's hear you. And they say guilty of all charges. And when you think it's over on November, you think, go, finally, yes, we have some type of justice. Nope, November 1979, Ted Bundy that then goes on trial for 12-year-old Kimberly Diane Leach. Now, the reason people were upset, the community was like, hey, we've already wasted enough money. It's been intense these past few months and months of Ted's behavior. What's the point? He got enough time. So he is sentenced to life. Well, because she's a 12-year-old. And they're like, no, we should take him to trial. We need to have him charged for every single murder that we can. So they go to trial for Kimberly Diane Leach. And I think it's the best thing that poor little girl will get some type of justice. Mind you, this is the same time he's like, okay, I feel like this is my vindication. Yes, I got this, but I can try my best to distract him. So on one day, he goes, and during the same day, he has already gone to trial. We're not going to go through the trial on this one because it
was a very quick trial.
It was a
wasn't
quick,
like
but it was also pointless in the sense of what he does to distract him.
Mm-hmm.
I do want to mention he does one distraction, which I think is so fucking disrespectful to this poor little girl. At the same time, he has a woman who has been following this whole trial.
Yeah, because they meet in Washington, so they've already met.
If you heard noise in the background, I was doing laundry, so I apologize. I forgot. We all forgot. Well, anyway, so one day he has a woman that has been, going on the news, has been interviewed, and is his number one supporter. Her name is Carol Boone. And Carol Boone has said Ted doesn't have anyone else to speak well on his behalf other than his mother. And so Carol Boone gets on, he puts her up there and he's interviewing her. And during that interview, he says, Carol Boone, will you marry me? Yes, I will. I'll marry you, she says to him. And what a fucking distraction. The same day, mind you, that they're about to make the judgment and go on back there and say, hey, let's think about this. They come to a verdict that same day, but he wants to distract them by saying, look, what a love story. Anyway, they ended up coming back with luckily, with a verdict of guilty and sentenced to death. This was perfect because I feel like it was what everyone was expecting, what everyone was wanting. And really, he deserved.
So he ended up being, he was charged also for, so it's 3 times to death by execution. So he was also charged for execution on the other 2 murders of the co-ed women. So that was three times by death by execution.
Yeah, because I think I said that it was like...
Life. Yeah.
But it was actually execution. You're right. Thank you.
To death by execution. 3.
Which is finally the best vindication for all these murders. But you think it ends there, and it doesn't. I almost feel like it's a slap in the face over and over. So, on January 22nd, 1989, after days of trying to appeal his execution, Bundy decides to confess. Only, please don't think that he's doing this out of the kindness or the guilt-ridden, that he's guilt-ridden every night. No, there happened to be someone who worked for people that were in jail and were about to be sentenced to death. Well, days were coming by, and this woman was wanting to help, but he had to confess. And so he would get life sentence, rather than sentenced to death. So Bundy decides, of course, to say, yes, I'll do it. I'll confess. And he does. The only thing is, he confesses, and he confesses to murder. He confesses to the girls. He confesses to some people, so many things. Now, the one thing he never had confessed prior to this, and he confesses it, is that he was having... not only was he sodomizing these women and these girls, but he was having sex with their corpses. So nobody knew that until that moment. And that's what took the switch. Mind you, this is 3 days, then 2 days, and then it's becoming only 1 day till his execution. And so he goes into he explains everything. They're going to detail, like, well, how did you do this? Where did you find those girls? Where did you find this body? Where, blah, blah, blah. And he's going to detail after detail. But finally, on January 23rd, 1989, Theodore Bundy sat, and I think they waited. People came and flocked out there. They had shirts, murder, Ted sit on
burn Bundy burn.
Burn Bundy burn. Thank you. And They watched this entire thing. They waited all day and all night.
They were gonna wait, yeah.
Yeah, finally nightfall came and they said, you can see the prison at the very corner to the right. In the bottom was where they were setting up his chair. Right before they're setting up his chair, he's having his last meal. He's having a conversation with one of his friends, his old friends. And he says, I have this pen. I'm not going to do it. I'm not going to go onto that chair. I'm just going to stab myself. I'm going to do it. Well, then do it, bitch. I would be like, do it, bitch.
The calm in that, he's an FBI, a special FBI agent. He's a special FBI agent. And the calm in his voice when he's hearing him say this, I was just like...
And when I say friend, I mean because...
Because they've been talking back and forth for the last couple of years, 3-4 years.
Very long time.
Yeah.
I think he thinks he's his friend, but he does his best to make him feel like that. And which is a great thing.
He does.
So that night comes, they're getting him ready. Of course, Ted doesn't execute himself, God forbid. Because
It's what he said to him too. I was just like, he stopped me in my tracks when he said, can I say what he said?
Yes, go ahead.
Let me find it real quick because I wrote that down because I was just like, wow, you really you got him. So he says to Ted, he said, I'm going to stick this pin in my artery and I will bleed out before anybody can get here. And then he tells Ted, don't you think taking a life, even if it's your own, is a method of homicide? Though they call it suicide. And I was just like...
Well, the only reason that he was questioning him is because Ted had just mentioned... I didn't want to go into detail because I didn't feel like he was needed that respect. But he brought up religion and that when he goes up there, he wants to be forgiven. And that's when he makes this comment and the guy rebuttals with, well, if you want to be forgiven, but you want to add one more body, which is yourself, to another murder, you want to stack up this many murders? And he's like, wow, you got me.
And I only bring it up because it's how these men were trained to try to bring out what Ted had done.
But he's also de-escalating the situation.
No, yeah, he is. But I was just like, wow. Like, you guys got him to confess. Because, of course, again, if it only benefits Ted, he's going to do it.
I feel like in this situation, I'm glad that he de-escalated that thought out of him. Because he deserved to be walked all the way down. And they finally set him down in the chair. They, of course, fasten him and they get him ready.
The way they describe it, I was like, damn.
It's scary for the regular mind. It's heartbreaking because it's a human being. Yes, he did what he did and he deserves everything. But, as us with we have an emotional background, we can feel sorry because it's still human. At least I did. But then a quick second, right?
Because I was just like, because they're describing what he's doing. They're tying him here, they're shaving him there, they're putting the cap, and then they pull a switch. And I'm just like, oh.
And the one thing that they didn't know is that as they were sitting there, and of course they give him the okay, like, we're ready to go. They tell the executor, go ahead, pull the plug. Can
you imagine the person that's pulling the switch?
Well, I'm about to get to it.
Oh, okay. Oh my God.
So as they tell the executor, go ahead, the executor presses and volts go in and Ted Bundy puts a fist because I guess his body is, tightening up and, it has all this voltage. What he didn't know was that the person underneath that mask takes it off and it's a woman.
No.
It's a woman who they allowed to execute him for all the women that he had murdered.
Wow. I heard that, but I thought they were just thinking that or hoping that it was a woman for all the women that he hurt. Crazy.
No, it was a woman. But you think it's over. And for one more last spit and slap in the face to every human being, or I should say every woman and victim who had came across him, is he tells them, I want to be cremated. And not just in anywhere. He wants to be cremated on Cascade Mountain. And because that's where he's had his best time. And he wants to be put there. And of course, they're gonna abide to it. He said that's where he had the best time, but that's also where his victims lied.
And they go and show the Cascade Mountains. It's a beautiful place. And to watch that at the very end and see how beautiful it is and see that those are where a lot of his victims were at, it was a little emotional because I was like, how dare you take that? You already took their lives. Now you're taking their final resting place from them.
How dare they agree to that?
How dare you do that? How dare you?
I would have found the first trash can and dumped him in there. But I don't know how they have to abide by these rules, but I feel like what a fucking asshole. Even till the very end, he's like, oh, one more thing, by the way. What a fucking well, anyway, sorry, I'll get into it and I'll get into. But I just want to say that was a really intense story. That was a lot for both of us, right? I know it's a lot for Melissa, but it's a lot to take in. We just want to say thank you so much for listening. Until next week, we'll see you then. Dame besito. We gotta go.
Bye, guys.
Bye.